Hello and welcome back to the second half of Module 7, Week 7. And here we're going to talk about persuasive messaging, or persuasive messages within group dynamics, or between salespeople, or even just trying to communicate an idea to another person. Because remember, every time we speak, as I'm speaking to you right now, I'm trying to persuade you that this is important stuff to know. So no matter what, we tend almost 99% of the time when we speak to another person to persuade them of something. So that's what I want to look at. And there's a long list of things here. We're going to sort of look very briefly at each one. I want to talk about the 3x3 writing process, which is very useful when in writing persuasive messages, whether you're speaking or writing online, whatever it may be. And I want to talk about the 4-part AIDA strategy, not the Verdi opera, of course, but AIDA strategy for writing successful persuasive messages, crafting persuasive messages, understanding interpersonal persuasion at work and how that works within an organization, how to create effective and ethical direct mail and email sales messages. We'll look a little bit at those. And then finally, the basic techniques for developing persuasive media releases. Okay, so the first learning objective is this notion of creating a persuasive message. And what that means is both between organizations and within, right, using the intranet, people are constantly creating messages. And those messages are, for the most part, persuasive because you're asking someone to do something. So whether they are a superior or someone that you're working with, you could be your subordinates. You're trying to get them to do something. Yes, you may be their boss, but you wish to persuade them in a respectful way, in an ethical kind of way. And that's really kind of what you're doing here. You're still creating a persuasive message. And this now becomes even more important because as the business world begins to sort of reorganize itself, and there's always, lean this and lean that. Well, now there's leaner corporate hierarchies, which means that those division walls that used to stand between departments, there used to be walls. At first they were ceilings because somehow some departments were considered more important than others. So there was a kind of vertical integration. Now there's more of a horizontal integration where each department is equally important. But there are still hierarchies of one sort or another. And you want to make sure that you can sort of address those differences correctly. And if not, at least understand that the lines of authority are now blurred to the point where when you are writing a message, yes, you're writing on behalf of the department, but it's still you that is signing off. So the lines of authority may be blurred to the degree where you may have more authority in picking and choosing what to do. But whenever you are writing to someone and persuading them, you need to make sure you own that message, right? You need to own it. So persuasive skills, communication skills have become more and more important at work, simply as teams and managers, walk away from this vertical integration and move more towards a horizontal one where, yes, all departments are equal, but departments now need to speak to each other within the department or between the department, and there's less sort of having to go through an authority figure. Okay, so we're writing a persuasive message. What is persuasion? Can we define it? Well, like any other word, yes, we can. Persuasion, first of all, is a symbolic process. We're not hitting someone over the head. We are trying to use meaningful words, signs, symbols, images that are rich with meaning to get someone to think in a certain way. Now, persuasion can be to physically ask someone to do something, to get off their chair and go somewhere else, or at the very least to change their mind, right? So it is a symbolic process, and it's symbolic because it uses words and images rather than, physical threats, because you may think that's an effective way to do things, but you'll end up in HR real fast. So don't even consider it. So persuasion is symbolic because it uses words. It doesn't do it directly. And it doesn't do it directly even if it still attempts to influence a person. You're trying to influence a person by getting them to understand that the change that you're asking them to consider is possible and important. whether it's to change your mind or to do something. Regardless, that change is not only possible, but it is an important change. Now, it also should be a degree of self-persuasion. You have to buy into it. If you're going to persuade someone to do something, believe in it. Believe not just in how persuasive you are, but believe in the change itself. Believe that this change is good. So ethical communicators are going to convince others about something that they already believe very strongly about. So persuasion should be fairly easy, but the degree to which you have been self-persuaded and you believe in something, you can't turn around and using a paragraph full of exclamation marks, try to convince someone that something is what it is, that, X or Y is correct and you should believe in it, or at least you should go do it, or whatever it is. So persuasion is symbolic, using words and images and signs. It also is an attempt to influence a person to either change their mind or do something, or certainly both. But you have to believe in it. You yourself have to be self-persuaded. And that is an important thing. So persuasion involves transmitting a message from the sender to the receiver. And it can be verbal, nonverbal, face-to-face, done through social media, or right in front of another person, over the phone. It doesn't matter. But persuasive messages can also appeal to our emotional core as well, without manipulating people. Because if you are forcing someone to comply, that's not a choice. You have to do the following. So you may appeal to their emotions, but you need to appeal in a sense that gives that person a choice. Now, people are free. They're not forced to comply. And if you present it to them in a persuasive and reasonable manner, it's not much of a fight for people to embrace it. But you have to give them the choice. You can't browbeat them or force them to comply. That's not how it works. Now, when it does work well, we have this thing called the 3x3 writing process. Now, this is going to be effective whether you're writing an email or a case study. So let's have a look at it. Now, the first part is pre-writing. And that's just jotting down ideas. You want to decide on the purpose. What am I doing? What am I analyzing? What's my problem? What's my main thesis? Then the second thing is, once you've identified that, in a general sense, profile the audience. Who's going to write this? Oh, sorry. Who's going to read this? My mistake. Who's going to read this? And then you need to figure out, okay, if I know what my main thesis is, my main persuasive message, and I've identified my audience, how do I adapt my persuasive message to make it most effective? What techniques can I use to adapt the message so that it speaks directly to that person who is my audience? So that's kind of the pre-writing, and it's thinking about it. There's not actual writing in this case. It's pre-writing because you're thinking about it seriously. But when it comes time to writing, which is part two, you start to gather your data, right? You want to gather the facts that you wish to present by way of supporting your opinion, right? Because a persuasive message still has to be backed up with something. There has to be a reason why that person wishes to even listen to the message in the first place. So you research by gathering data and providing facts. You organize those facts together in a persuasive and effective way. And you start working on your first draft. And you can sort of just get ideas down. That's one of the best ways to do it, even in point form. I would write it rather than block letters. Don't worry about perfect grammar. You're just trying to get them down, get these ideas down on paper. The third part is, for some people, the hard part, which is to revise and proofread and evaluate that message. So you edit the message, making sure that it's clear, it's conversational, it's concise, it's readable, it's persuasive, it's honest, it's effective. As long as it is effective, that's what you want to do. Read the message. Make sure that it's properly spelled and grammatically correct and stylistically correct. And then finally, read it through one last time and say, okay, I need to evaluate this message. Can I say that this message has achieved its purpose, which is to, let's say, convince your subordinates in your department to come out on a Saturday morning on a day where they'd like to sleep in, or maybe go to the market or play with their kids, to come out and on behalf of the company, go and clean Victoria Park, right? Sure, I'd love to. Now, you can force people to do it, or you can persuade people to do it. If you force people to do it, they'll come up with all kinds of excuses why they can't do it, because they're busy, they're sick, they're whatever. But if you can persuade them and say that, the environment is important, picking up garbage is important, maybe after that we'll, go for drinks or whatever, however you wish to persuade people, that will tell you whether that message is effective or not. So think of the purpose, analyze the purpose, because you're trying to convert the receiver of the message over to your ideas, that the environment is important and doing this is worthwhile. You want to motivate them to act in a certain way. So all those things are important for your message to get through persuasively. So adapt to the audience to make your message heard. You may wish to speak their language if you like. You can sort of not talk down to them, but talk down let me rephrase that. You don't want to talk down to people, but you can speak conversationally. Use, contractions. Make it look more relaxed, more conversational. But it's not a matter of talking down to people. That's what I want to be clear about. And when you're doing this, if you are making a persuasive message that might be used in advertising, you may already know this idea of IATA, which is attention, interest, desire, and action. And it looks basically like this. So you catch that person's attention with a surprise, graphics, title, unexpected content, situation, whatever it may be. You grab their attention. Then once you have their attention, you hold that interest by presenting to them the relevant message. You can promise a reward or satisfaction. Hey, if you help me on a Saturday morning to clean up Victoria Park, not only will our environment look beautiful, you'll feel good that you've done something. However you want to hold that interest that you've now captured with an interesting way to start your email or your message in some way. Now you want to maintain that desire, urgency of a special occasion, some unique benefit of whatever you're going to do. Now, if it's an advertisement, you can offer, some special coupons or discounts or whatever. But the brand image or whatever that may be, this is again more for advertising. It's certainly there. But the message, such as the one I've described about going to, clean up Victoria Park on a Saturday morning, that's a feeling of urgency, the feeling of a special situation. It's also communicating unique benefits, cleaning up the environment. That will instill a desire. And then finally, what is the action? If it's an advertisement, you can purchase something, order something, subscribe to something, or you can simply tell people, okay, if you wish to participate, just send me back the email and check off the box, or just the act of submitting it back to me tells me yes. Whatever it is, let people know what action is required of them because they've now bought into your persuasive message. So all these things apply to both the advertising world and the persuasive email world or speaking face-to-face world, really because they amount to the same thing. So a persuasive request, a message, should be brief, should be relevant to the audience, and should be engaging, right? Shouldn't drive them away. It should instill a desire. So attention, summary of the problem, reader benefits, interest, whatever kind of facts or figures or examples you think are relevant, increase desire. And you do that by reducing the resistance through the credibility of the message. Anticipate objections. The person may say, come on, man, it's Saturday morning. I want to sleep in. So anticipate objections, build them into the message. And then demonstrate competence, the fact that you know what you're talking about, because now you've backed up what you've said with facts and figures and examples. So the desire and the credibility are there. And then finally, the last part is the action. What do you want people to do? What is the specific request that you are making of them? To simply change their minds, to go and do something on a Saturday morning, to, if it's an advertisement, buy a product, subscribe to, a blog or whatever it may be. Regardless of the message, you want to make sure that people know what they have to do. Excuse me. So you can make your persuasive recommendation specifically, confidently, and you don't want to sort of supply excuses, because you also don't want to build into your message a way for them to back away and say, well, given what you've said, I'm not interested. So a persuader or a persuasive message is believable and effective if the reader sees it as so. All right, it needs to be effective, and if it is believable, that persuasive effect will work. Now, having said that, if you feel manipulated or lied to or coerced, the argument fails because you have forgotten to allow choice. Maybe some people just cannot go on a Saturday morning to do something because they have a family, because they're going to be away. Maybe they've planned something for months. You have to anticipate some people saying no, but they can certainly buy into your message. They just can't follow through with it. But if you are trying to manipulate or coerce people, that message is going to fall on deaf ears. And if not, it will look unethical, because you're trying to not persuade people. You're trying to browbeat people into doing something. That's not the way to do it. So persuasion becomes unethical when those facts are distorted, they're overlooked, they may be cherry-picked, and only some of them are being presented. And that's kind of double speak, right? You're lying truthfully, and you don't want to be doing that. You don't want someone to see through the message and see the distortion and the lying behind it. That's not what you want to do, because that does not make a persuasive message. So when you are thinking about putting together this persuasive message, and again, it can be just a simple email. You describe the problem. Saturday morning, we need to go and clean up, before that, our environment is kind of getting dirty. There's garbage everywhere. Okay, state something unexpected. It's getting worse. Suggest reader benefits. If we go and do this, we can clean up one small area of the city. Maybe in a few weeks, we could go to another park and we do it again. The reader benefits are very clear. Our environment is going to clean up. You can praise the individual that is reading this, provide compliments. Anything that will engage the receiver of the message persuasively through an emotional component. Whatever you do, you need to make sure that you are not manipulating these people. So in order to achieve that, it requires a degree of planning and skill. And you want to make sure you think through, right, the purpose of the message. What am I trying to tell them? And then from that, if you can identify that clearly, it will help you to create a thoughtful message. So that's what you want to do. You want to persuade someone to do something that benefits yourself, because you want to have a nicer world. But it could be something completely different. It could be within the confines of the organizational culture, and you wish to have someone present, let's say, a case study, a report that is due, let's say, on Friday, but you have a chance to present it on Wednesday. So you need to persuade that person to finish it 2 days early. Oh, okay, could be a lot of work, and only really you benefit from it. You're asking that person to really, push themselves to the limit and crunch time 2 days early, because you have a chance to present this thing 2 days ahead of time, and it's going to make you look good. You have to be super persuasive about that. And again, you can't coerce that person, because they could find a way around not providing that, not showing up on a Wednesday. So if you are really careful, you can ask people for, time, money, information, cooperation, special privileges, work outside the organizational environment. All those things can be achieved if the message is written persuasively. Now, keep in mind the message can flow in two different ways. Now, I talked about a message flowing hierarchically, sort of horizontally rather than vertically. But for the most part, this is more to do with a superior and a subordinate. So messages flowing downward is from the employer or the boss down to the people that work for him. So whether it's to volunteer for projects, to participate in a capacity outside of work, whatever it may be, the messages flowing downward always require to pay attention to the tone, right? Style is one thing, but the tone, right? Again, here, even the verbs, should and must, right, convey like tones of different types. Should might be softer rather than must. Must could be considered negatively. So be careful in using those particular terms. Give the people an option by using should, could, might, but do it in a way that you will gently persuade them to say yes. So when the message flows downward from the employer to the employees, make sure you pay attention to the tone. Make sure you pay attention to the kinds of verbs that are being used. Now, if it flows the other way, it's flowing upward from the subordinate to the superior. Again, it's something that you should be able to do with a degree of honesty and openness, but you want to provide evidence for that which you are recommending. If you're asking for a pay raise, you may want to back that up with facts and figures and at least with evidence. And that's where you really can think carefully about the persuasive aspect of the message. If you're asking for a pay increase and you've got facts and figures to back it up and the evidence of how hard you've worked, okay, you state it confidently and fairly, and you hope that your boss is going to read it and consider it seriously. So depending on what the message is, it can flow from employer to employee or employee to employer, from subordinate to superior. So regardless, here flowing upwards, no matter what you are requesting, make sure that you back it up with facts and figures and evidence. Why? Because then that message is more difficult to ignore. Because if you're asking for, let's say, a budget increase, and you back it up with facts and figures and evidence, we've lost some cases. We've lost, work because we can't keep up. We need to hire more people. That's a message coming from the floor up to the boss or up to the superior. And you state it confidently and fairly, and know that your facts and figures and evidence will be that objective support that you need to make your persuasive message that much more effective. That's essentially it. I didn't want to go too far into it, but that's persuasive messaging within the work environment. But also you can apply that to writing an email to a friend, because remember, every message, spoken or written, is persuasive. That is the nature of messaging in the first place. So that's that, and we'll see you very shortly for our 1-hour Zoom for this week. Take care.